Hello everybody, hope you guys are all doing well. We are back again with yet another Abyss guide. This one is certainly something. HP inflation struck Genshin pretty hard this month. Some of the bosses in this rotation have almost double as much health as they had the last time they were in the Abyss. It's not quite unmanageable yet, but it does concern me a little bit for what's to come in future patches. My hope is that with the new endgame mode coming, they'll chill out on the HP inflation in Abyss, as the new mode can be scaled up as much as they want since there's optional non-gem rewards for whales to show off. But I digress. Anyways, if you're new here, welcome in. The way I do things here is I'll cover all important information about enemies and bosses that show up in the current floor 12. We'll then go into strong strategies and team building options for each fight. I won't simply just say X or Y team is good here, as that kind of information is already plentiful, and for most people it can be hard to use as everyone has a different account, and my goal with these is to provide information that is useful to you no matter what your account looks like. If this video is helpful for you, please consider subscribing for more Genshin endgame content like this. And don't forget to leave a like, share with your friends who might also need help in Abyss, and let me know in the comments below. All of that means a lot to me, and I truly appreciate all your support. But yeah, without further ado, let us begin with our Blessing of Abyssal Moon and Leyline Disorders. The Blessing of Abyssal Moon for this month will trigger a shockwave whenever you do cryo damage, with a 4-second cooldown. In this Abyss, cryo characters, both DPS and supports, are very useful for a lot of these enemies. And this little extra buff just gives them a small bonus on top of that. You don't really build your team around this buff ever, but you'll almost certainly find yourself using a cryo character or two for this month, so this buff will naturally give you a little bit of extra damage. As for our Leyline Disorders, the first half we get a 75% damage bonus when characters have 0 energy. There are 2 characters in the game that can do literally anything with this, Malika and Skirk. And Skirk's best teams are borderline unusable against 2 of 3 of the first half fights, and really good against all of the second half fights, so it might as well just be Malika. Now, you may be thinking that characters that burst before using their main combo will be able to utilize this a little bit, but the second they pick up any particle, even if it's just 1 energy, the buff is gone. Snapshotting bursts also snapshot with 100 energy, not 0 energy, so those will not work either. Unfortunately, this is just straight up Malika half and nothing else. If you don't have her, well, you might as well be playing buffless on the first half. As for the second half, well, we get at least 2 times as many buffed characters here, with a 75% cryo normal attack bonus. This is mainly utilized by Skirk and Wriothesley. Ayaka and Chongyun teams can also make some use out of it, but they won't be quite as good as Skirk or Wriothesley as pilots for this buff. Well, at least it's better than the first half, I guess. Beginning us off, we have Chamber 1 first half with 2 Cryosyssin mages with 500,000 HP each, followed by a Wayward Hermetic Spirit Speaker with 2.9 million HP. Normally, the trash mobs before a boss aren't really worth any comment, but these ones can actually be incredibly annoying. They have a move that gives them a cryo shield based on the amount of alive Sissons, and a move that teleports them away from you. If it uses either of these moves early into the fight, it's honestly worth it just to reset the run and look for better RNG. Especially if only one teleports away and the other stays, because now they're just spread out. Some teams can disregard the cryo shield as it is incredibly weak and may just break instantly, but for some teams it can be really annoying as the summoned Sissons will just keep refreshing it over and over if they're not killed. This is particularly noticeable on Malika teams, as if you swap in Malika on the cryo shield, you can't really ult because you lose all the ult damage, but if you bring in Bennett to deal with the shield, now your Sealolly application timer is all messed up and your rotations are all over the place after that. But if these enemies cooperate with you and don't use any of the annoying attacks, they'll drop pretty quickly. One more thing to note on them, if you're using a team that's very reliant on auto-targeting like Yoimiya, get very close to the mage you want to hit, as the auto-targeting will tweak out with all the Sissons around if you don't basically force it to hit the target you want. Anyways, after they're dealt with, the main boss spawns. She has 60% higher cryo res than all other res, but given how her mechanic works, you already shouldn't be using a cryo DPS here to begin with. As soon as she spawns, she will start charging up her main gimmick attack. This takes a few seconds to do, and unlike most other bosses, she does not get any extra res while doing this. So if you killed the Sisson mages towards the front end of your DPS's field time, you can pretty easily transition to hitting the boss as soon as she spawns for a little bit of extra damage. Once the mechanic begins, the boss will be untargetable and 4 cryo clones of her will spawn. These have a cryo ward health bar that is damaged by triggering reactions. Pyro is the most efficient, followed by Electro, followed by Anemo and Geo. You can also use Sealolly or Auroron's charge attack on one of the clones to break 25% of the shields of all the clones and stun them for a long period of time. You cannot do this while they're already stunned, so you need to bring someone alongside them that actually damages them while they are stunned. Something you can do with Sealolly and Auroron is to walk near one of the clones as soon as they spawn, and just kind of wait a second before firing your charge attack, so you can time it and catch 2 of the clones stacked on top of each other, making them even quicker to deal with. You can pair this with C6 Bennett and break them incredibly quickly. While they are very useful, Sealolly and Auroron are not at all necessary to deal with this. The shields are quite fragile, so any character with good Pyro or even Electro application can break the things quite easily. Any on-fielder, catalyst, or off-field applier of the aforementioned elements will be great here, plus Bennett. He tends to actually be incredibly good here, especially with C6 Bennett because he can just sit in your circle and play tower defense until they all break. The Pyro characters will be a little better, but if you have better builds or teams on the Electro options, it can be totally viable to take a team with them instead, as being able to deal with the boss's actual HP faster is far more valuable in this fight. Speaking of the boss, every time you break one of the clones that is not stunned by Sealali or Auron, she will be stunned for a split second before leaving again. Once the fourth clone is broken, she will fully reappear, be stunned, and all res reduced by 40%. When the stun ends, she will remain tangible and fight you normally for a little bit before starting the mechanic again. This is why I said bringing a team that can deal with the boss HP faster is better, even if it means sacrificing some speed breaking the clones. You really don't want to lack damage to the point that she's able to resummon the clones, because you'll lose a massive amount of time if you have to break them twice. As for team building here, you'll want to use a team that has good single target damage and features a character or characters that can deal with the clones. Bonus for having Auron or Sealali. Obviously, given the leyline disorders, Mawika is the best here, as she can use Bennett and Sealali while also nuking the boss. Other than this, the main thing you should look for is featuring as many Electro and Pyro as you can while still having strong damage. Because of this, Overload is also great for this, as it literally only has Pyro and Electro. Chaska teams are perfectly good too, as she uses both Bennett and Sealali, or Bennett and Electro if you don't have Sealali. Mono Pyro is also a solid option if you have access to Mono Pyro teams with respectable damage. Otherwise, any Pyro main DPS team is really fine here. I could keep listing more and more teams that work here, but there are a lot of teams in this game that feature pretty good Pyro characters, so you should just play to the strengths of your account given the fairly lax requirement of this boss. Moving along, we have two Ruin enemies with 715,000 HP each, followed by a Perpetual Mechanical Array with 2.7 million HP. The first two enemies are just generic enemies with no particular strength or weakness, just don't use physical against them as they are Ruin enemies. As for the Perpetual Mechanical Array, the same no physical rule applies, and honestly, he doesn't have any particular strength or weakness either. It's a very simple enemy that's mainly built to time stall. When it reaches 35% HP, it will begin its main mechanic, and its HP cannot be lowered below 30% until it is played out at least once. For the mechanic, it will go invincible and spawn 4 Ruin enemies. One of these enemies will have a yellow circle around it. Kill this enemy, and all the others will automatically die, and the boss will be stunned and its res reduced. Since this fight is so simple and time stall-y, you should focus your efforts on building a team for the first half, and make the best single target team you can out of what is left over for this half. The only teams particularly better here than others are of course Skirka and Risley, as they can utilize the leyline buff for this half. But other than these two, everything else is pretty much on a level playing field. Since this boss spends so much time invincible, with an attack where it leaves the arena, going invulnerable when getting low, and staying invulnerable while it slowly sets up its mechanic, and then still being invulnerable while you do the mechanic, you're punished less for using a team that is slightly weaker on this half than on the first half, where you have to redo the entire clone mechanic a second time if you don't kill the boss fast enough. I honestly don't know why they recently became so obsessed with this bossing in and started spamming it in the Abyss, since it's really old, but I guess it makes my job easier because there really isn't any strategy or team building you need to think about on this boss. Up now we have by far the biggest offender of HP inflation in this Abyss. 3 Yumkasaurus with 500,000 HP each, followed by a gluttonous Yumkasaur Mountain King with 5.2 million HP. Just for comparison, the last time this guy was in Abyss, he had 3.5 million HP. That's an increase of almost 2 million HP. Not to mention the 3 ads before the boss also had their HP increased by 200,000 each since then. Just for fun, I'll be showing one of my clears from the past patch that this guy was in Abyss and comparing it with the exact same team but in this patch. Anyways, the mobs before the boss are just basic enemies. I will say though, they can be quite annoying to follow around with their jump attacks, and if you don't have full energy going into this chamber, it can be a nightmare to build up while keeping the enemies grouped. Because of this, if you haven't already, you should hit a quick reset and redo chamber 1, making sure you have full energy. Because with such a big HP bar on the main boss, you really need every second you can get. Once the boss does spawn, it will start by doing an extremely dangerous triple fire breath attack that leaves fire on the ground. This attack does huge damage, so you need to dodge it. Shields will not live all 3 hits. The fire it leaves on the ground will persist for the remainder of the fight and will do damage and apply pyro to anyone standing in it. Its second attack will be to spit out 3 fire fruits. You need to hit all of these fruits with pyro to do massive damage to the boss and stun it. If you do not explode all 3 of them, it will do the pyro breath attack again, equal to the number of times it swallowed fruit. Which is not the biggest punish ever really. The main loss is just the huge amount of damage and stun window for your DPS that you get for breaking the fruits. In the past, I said it was optional to break the fruits, but in the past it also had 2 million HP less than it does now. The second half in this chamber is also quite stally, so you really can't afford to skip out on breaking the fruits. Plus the auto-targeting is just a massive pain in the ass if you don't break the fruits, because your party members really want to try to break the fruits, even if they aren't pyro. The second time he spits out fruit, it will only be 1 fruit, and he will not be stunned when you break it. But the third time, he will go back to doing 3. Honestly though, if you've been fighting him long enough for him to spit fruit 3 times, you're probably already cooked. One more thing to mention about the fruit attack, you are able to make him spit the fruit into the pyro trail that's on the ground, and then swirl it with an animo character that will swirl the self-applied element, so something like a Jean or a Kazuha ult, and the pyro hits from that will be able to break the fruits. It's not really the best option, but if you really are strapped for pyro characters, it's something you could try. Aside from the first attack, the most threatening attack is when he smacks his belly twice and then spins towards the edge of the arena. This is a very long, lingering hitbox during which you can't get near him at all, or you'll be sent flying. Plus, the pyro trails on the ground mean this attack will usually trigger burning on you if you get hit. Even worse, after he does this once, he'll use anywhere between 0 and 5 attacks from my testing before he will spin back to the middle again. This means you could just sit there waiting for him to go back before you start another rotation, only for him to just not ever go back. Or you could opt to start your rotation immediately, and he just decides he wants to spin back without attacking at all, forcing you to leave your buffs behind. It's incredibly annoying, and may make you reset a few times if you get unlucky. Also, be wary of his super secret hidden power that even the wiki doesn't tell you about. Jokes aside, his hitbox is very slanted, and any character that dashes when they attack can easily get launched off of him, which basically stuns the character as they lock your inputs until you're back on the ground. Try to aim here with any attack that gives forward momentum, as I found this is the most consistent spot to not get launched. For team building here, it has increased Dendro res compared to other res, so do not bring Dendro DPS here, and of course you'll pretty much need a pyro character for the fruits unless you're trying the Animo character strategy. Moika is the only team that's much better than the others here due to the leyline disorder. But there's a myriad of other teams that use a pyro character or two, so you should again just build a good single target team that features a pyro character. Next up, we have an Electro Lector with 900,000 HP, followed by a Millennial Pearl Seahorse with 2.1 million HP. Wait a second, I swear I've heard this before. Oh yeah, this is the same exact thing we had 2 months ago, just with a little bit more HP. Here we go again, I guess. Starting off with the Lector, when it gets low, it will put up an Electro Shield and make its regular HP undamageable. Once the shield is broken, it will die. We'll save discussing how to break the shield for now, as the boss has the same type of shield, so for now all there is to note is that some of its attacks will drain your party energy. You should really try to avoid getting hit by these, as going into the boss with messed up energy will be really hard to recover from. Speaking of the boss, once the Lector is killed, it will spawn with over 200% res while it creates its pearl. Don't even bother trying for actual damage here, just use this time to farm up any energy you're missing due to the Lector's attacks. Once it's done with this, it will have an Electro Shield on its front half. It has increased res while the pearl is active, so it's important to break the pearl. And by the way, everything about breaking the pearl applies to the Electro Shield as well. It's weakest to Dendro, Pyro, and Cryo. And even though Dendro does break it at the same speed as the other two elements, Dendro teams typically feature Electro characters, which not only can't break the shield, but also do less damage to this chamber, as both enemies have higher Electro res. So generally you should stick to Pyro and Cryo for this. Once the pearl gets low on HP, the Seahorse will fly up in the sky and spawn 3 little Electro Prisms around the arena. These will break to a single Pyro, Cryo, Dendro, Geo, or Animo attack. Once all 3 are broken, the boss will be stunned and res reduced. At this point, it's quite easy to deal with, as it has low HP and low res. There is something you can do though to prevent it from flying up and wasting your time hitting the Electro Prisms. Once the shield starts getting close to 33% or so, save all your cooldowns and wait for it to start an attack. Once it's locked in the attack animation, use all your best shield break abilities to burst it down and break the pearl, stunning the boss before it ever gets a chance to fly away. This is definitely the play this month, as you're going to need every second you possibly can get on this chamber, and doing this saves you quite a few of those. As for team building, since the boss itself is squishy, you should mostly focus on being able to break the 2 Electro Shields fast. Thanks to the leyline disorder, Skirk and Risley are going to be the best, as they can break the shields efficiently while also having extra damage when hitting the normal health bars. Even if you don't have Skirk, Escoffier teams in general are still one of the best here, because they typically feature 2 or 3 Cryo characters, which all will break the shield very quickly. This will make bursting the pearl down before the boss can fly even easier. Any Pyro DPS will also be very good here for the same reasons. They're just lacking the extra damage that Skirk and Risley will get. You can also do small changes like replacing your shielder with Layla, Silali, Diona, or Toma, or replacing your healer with Charlotte, Bennett, or Yao Yao. Any small thing like this will add up in the overall goal of breaking the Electro Shields. Because these shields are such a bottleneck to your clear time, I would recommend building your team for this half first. If you can get something together that can easily break the shields, you leave yourself much more time to eat through the high HP of the first half, and the element requirements on that side are just much more forgiving in general. Starting off our final chamber, we have 3 Nimble Harvester mechs with 500,000 HP each, followed by the Nemesis of Coppelius with 3.1 million HP. The mobs before the boss are pretty annoying here yet again. In the neutral they will roll away from you, but when they attack they roll towards you, and they roll really far, so it's pretty easy to ungroup them again. Once again, I would recommend resetting until you get a run where you can comfortably clear them. Once they're dead, the Dancing Robot duo spawns. This fight is basically the epitome of Glass Cannon. They have low HP and low res, but do a ton of damage. Kill me before I kill you type fight. It's actually really fun. I wish they would put these guys in Abyss more. As soon as the fight starts, they will enter the climax sequence. During this sequence, the male robot stays in the middle and the female skates around the outer edge. The robot in the middle will execute the following sequence: 3 cape attack sweeps, raise cryo shield, cane swing, skate attack, cape sweep. While he is doing this, the other robot will do the following sequence: 3 animal range attacks, spin, and dash to the middle. They will go through this sequence 3 times before the climax ends and their res becomes slightly reduced. You can also end climax early by hitting them with 3 Uja attacks, which will also stun them shortly. Similarly, you can one-tap the cryo shield that the middle robot puts up by hitting him with Uja. But honestly, using Uja is not necessary at all. The shield is very weak to Pyro, and the res reduction that happens when they exit climax is only 30%, so you shouldn't troll your team building just to have Uja for this. Speaking of team building, you can realistically use just about anything here as long as you can deal with the cryo shield. The only thing I would recommend against using is a cryo DPS, as they have heightened cryo res. This would mean bringing either Uja or a Pyro character. Electro works too, but it takes twice as long to break the shield, and it's not really going to feel that good to use. It can also be nice to bring a shield to this fight, as it can reduce the pressure on you to dodge every single attack. To nobody's surprise, Mawika is once again the best option here. Her teams can easily deal with the shield, and she does massive damage to the boss. But like usual, there are still a ton of other options. Lots of teams use Pyro characters, and you even have Uja as a backup, so you can formulate some sort of single target team that contains at least one shield breaker pretty easily. Honestly, I can't give a ton of advice regarding this chamber, as it's more of a mechanical skill check in your ability to just stay alive while doing damage at the same time. If you are struggling to stay alive, I would recommend keeping your camera mostly on the enemy on the outer edge, as her range attacks are much more lethal than the melee attacks of the guy in the middle, so if you can mostly focus on dodging those, especially if you bring a shield for the melee attacks, you should be able to stay alive for the duration of the fight. Finally, in Chamber 3's second half, we have a Secret Source Automaton Overseer device with 4.5 million HP. This is objectively the most limiting boss in this abyss in terms of what you can use against it, because of how its mechanics work. So let's uncover that right now. Once the fight starts, it will gain 210% all res, and a meter will appear under its health bar. The meter will increase over time and decrease when hit by cryo attacks. The higher the meter, the stronger the rotating beam attacks are. When the meter is below 7%, the beams are turned off and all res except cryo is set to 0, and cryo res is set to negative 40%. During this whole thing, there is a second meter that is hidden from view. It builds up as you have characters in Night Soul state. The more characters in Night Soul, the faster it builds up. With one Night Soul character, it takes 15 seconds, and with all 4, it takes just 2 seconds. When this hidden meter is full, the boss enters counterattack mode, where its res is set to 50% and it changes from rotating beams to a targeted Hydro Pillar. This kind of creates 2 defined playstyles for this boss. 1, bring a bunch of cryo characters to keep the main meter low, or 2, ignore cryo, bring Night Soul, and fight it in counterattack mode. The cryo mode is straight up better than Night Soul, as 0 and negative 40% are lower than 50%, but that 50% is still better than fighting into 210% res. So if you don't have any good cryo-based teams, you should play the Night Soul version. Now you may be wondering what happens with Sealolly, as she has overlaps with both playstyles. Well, don't worry, even in counterattack mode, if that meter remains under 7%, you still get the 0% and negative 40% res, and its new attack pattern is disabled as well. There's not a ton to comment on with this boss in regards to team building, as it's basically defined by the 2 playstyles. Best is a cryo DPS in a cryo-based team, especially Skirk and Risley with the Leyline buff. Second best is any other element DPS in a cryo-based team. And third is any team that has some Night Soul, and everything else is just completely not usable here. With this being so restrictive, you should prioritize building your team for this half before the first half here. It cannot be understated how easy this boss is with a cryo team though, so if you have access to it, you really should just play cryo. It literally doesn't attack you, and it has negative resists, so it's just a big old punching bag if you can do that. Overall, this abyss is not too restrictive aside from the last chamber, and mostly relies on the increased health pools to check you. Thanks to this though, you have a ton of options for what you want to use to tackle this. As I always say, the best method to get 9 stars is to go one chamber at a time and reset to build teams for the next chamber as you progress onwards. But if you do want to beat it all in one go, let's go into your best team choices for that. Because the second half is more restrictive than the first, you should focus on making a good second half team first. First chamber has no requirements, second needs Pyro or Cryo, third needs Cryo or Night Soul. Cryo is obviously the best option here, especially if you have one of the characters that can use the Leyline buff. If you don't have a good Cryo though, you can use a team with both Pyro and Night Soul just fine. As for the first half, the only hard requirement across the board is Pyro, with Uja being an optional choice for Chamber 3. Since you already need Pyro for the first 2 chambers though, you can mostly just disregard the Uja. If you're really struggling for time on Chamber 3 though, you could definitely play the Uja to get a little bit of extra time. Mawika is the only one who can utilize this Leyline buff, so other than that, any good single target team with some Pyro will get the job done pretty well. Honestly though, that really is it for this one. If you have any further questions about your exact situation, or you think I missed anything important, please let me know in the comments. I will have a pinned comment with any important info that I missed. Of course, if this video helps you, please leave a like, let me know in the comments, share it with your friends, and of course consider subscribing if you're not already for more like this. Anyways, that's going to be all for me today. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
今すぐ手も